Hey guys, welcome back to EK TV. I'm delighted to have Jimmy Nguyen with us from nChain. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, and bonjour tout le monde from Paris today.
So what brings you to Paris Blockchain Summit today?
So I'm speaking today at the Paris Blockchain Week Summit. I just spoke on a panel about the state of blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. And I'm speaking also this afternoon more specifically about the progress of BitcoinSV.
So tell us a bit more about BitcoinSV. Obviously this is an interesting time to talk about BitcoinSV, but before we get into the juicy stuff, tell us about what's going on with BitcoinSV. What projects are being built on there, what ecosystem are you guys building out?
So let's go back to the beginning. For those who are not familiar with BitcoinSV, it is the Bitcoin project that is restoring the original Bitcoin protocol, design, and mission, and its vision. So it's named after Satoshi vision, which is Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, and it emerged from a hard fork of the Bitcoin Cash network last November. So if you go back in Bitcoin's history, so Bitcoin's been around for 10 years now. It's 10 years old, and if we're honest, the dreams of Bitcoin's growth and global adoption have not happened, right? They've not happened to the scale anyone has wanted. And the reason for that is because on the Bitcoin Core BTC network, that network was never allowed to scale. The blocks got frozen at 1 megabyte in size, therefore you could only do a certain number of transactions. The network gets congested at times, slow, transaction fees get too high to the points where in end of 2017 you were looking at $40, $50 in the US per transaction, which is way too much to send a single transaction on the Bitcoin network. And so that led to an internal, debate in the Bitcoin community for years about whether you make the blocks bigger or keep the blocks smaller. Do you go to off-chain layer 2 solutions like Lightning Network? Yeah. Do you add segregated witness or not? That created the fork of Bitcoin Cash, where a camp moved towards saying, no, we need to make the blocks bigger. They raised the block cap to 32 megabytes. I thought they were going to start really restore the Satoshi vision. That's why nChain and our partners at CoinGeek, Calvin Ayers' organization, supported the Bitcoin Cash chain for a good year. We invested in it. We threw a lot of support behind it. We partnered with a lot of those companies until it became clear to us last summer that the protocol developers, Bitcoin ABC, wanted to, again, make significant changes to the Bitcoin protocol, such as changing the transaction ordering, adding opcodes that weren't in the initial design. And now it's clear, things that have happened later, they want to move to more of a pre-consensus model towards proof of stake rather than proof of work. So the fundamental issue that this raised was, should the Bitcoin protocol constantly be subject to developer experimentation, right? Should people keep fiddling with it? And our answer is no. The Bitcoin protocol has everything it needs to grow into a massively scaled blockchain. It can do what all the other blockchain projects claim to do: tokens, smart contracts, IoT communications, etc., if you allow it to just scale and keep the protocol stable. So that's why we fought a battle last November in the world's first Bitcoin hash war. It led to the fork of BitcoinSV emerging as its own chain and token. And our purpose and mission is very simple: restore the original Bitcoin protocol, Satoshi client software version 0.1, keep it stable, allow it to massively scale. That's why our chain has a default block cap now at 128 megabytes. Yeah. And we've seen the world's first 2 blocks of that size organically mined on March 30th and 31st of this year, just recently. Later this year, we're going to 512 megabytes, and then we're going to 1 to 2 gig on a path to one day a vision for terabyte-sized blocks, so that our vision is ultimately the Bitcoin blockchain is the world's data ledger that powers also the internet. So it's not just a payment transactional system, it is the data ledger for all world enterprise. So that's where we're going. We believe that's completely possible with the original Bitcoin protocol and design. If you just believe in it, lift its restrictions, and let it scale big, 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 big.
Thank you. I mean, you answered my next 2 questions there about the block size and about your vision, so that's great. Can you tell us a little bit more? I mean, obviously, in order for it to scale, obviously they need people to actually use the blockchain. So what currently, I mean, I don't know, what ecosystem projects there are out there in BitcoinSV, or what transactions people are actually making. What's the biggest, what should you say, application of BitcoinSV right now?
Sure. I think we're just getting started. And I think what people need to understand is what we're trying to do is create a highway with massive capacity, as many lanes as possible, so you don't ever get traffic jams. And the bigger highway you create, the more vehicles that will go on it, which are like the applications and projects, right, that come onto blockchain. So we want to create as big as possible to invite big enterprise, because if you're Amazon, if you're Alibaba, you're not going to build applications on a blockchain that you don't think will scale. That's one of Ethereum's major issues now, right? And why we're not seeing more really enterprise class applications there, other than just tokens, right? And so we know that's critical. It's kind of like a chicken and egg, syndrome, which is you need to build it bigger so that big businesses will take it seriously. So here are some things we're already seeing, and these are just from, I would say, smaller developer groups. We're not even big enterprises yet on BitcoinSV. One of the things that our development team did is not just lift the block cap to 128, but lift the restriction on size in the op return data field. So op return is a field in a Bitcoin transaction. And when I send you Bitcoin, I can also embed metadata into that field. So on BTC, it's at, I think, 80 bytes, which is pretty small. On Bitcoin Cash, it's about 220 bytes. On Bitcoin SV, it's now unrestricted, although the miners can set their own limits. So most of the miners have now set it to 100 kilobytes, which is a lot bigger. And so what has this led to? It's led to developers creating some interesting applications for storage and transmission of content and data with Bitcoin SV. So there's a bitcoinfiles.org service, which is kind of like Dropbox on Bitcoin SV. So I could upload Word documents, Excel files, PDFs, pay in Bitcoin SV, and then allow other people to access my files for micropayments of BSV. Correct, it's distributed storage. There's a bitco.media service that makes it easier to upload media files. Video files, music files. People have been uploading high-res photos with BitPaste, application created by the Money Button team, Ryan Charles, to make it easier to do multi-swipes to upload large files. This is just kind of a starting place because, we don't want people to perceive BSV as just purely a file storage service. It can be used for that and then used to create new ways to monetize content. So a good example is Metaflix, which just I saw an announcement about it recently. Someone created a service to upload large video, motion picture files, and uploaded a classic 1902 sci-fi film in its entirety to the BSV blockchain. That's pretty amazing and can really open up new ways to monetize content as well as the control of your own personal data as well. You can start monetizing your own data in this way.
Okay. So it sounds like you've got quite a lot going on there. Can you tell us a bit more? So I've heard a little bit about FloatExchange, which I believe is an exchange for Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin SV's ecosystem. I believe that's been pushed forward as of recent events. So could you tell us a bit more about that exchange, what you're hoping for it to achieve, and
Okay. So FloatSV was announced recently. It's not our exchange. We don't run it, and we're not involved in operating it. But Jack Liu, who is a longtime and well-known Bitcoin executive, most known for his work at OKX, is starting it along with a super wallet called RelayX. And FloatSV's concept, from what I've read and what I've heard from Jack, is to be an exchange focused just on real-world assets that are tokenized. He's identified a big problem in our crypto world now is there's too many digital assets, too many tokens, right? And a lot of them aren't real in the sense that they don't represent any real value underneath them, if we're really honest with ourselves, right? And so that's created this almost like casino exchange mentality, right? Where people, get accounts on exchanges, they buy a coin hoping it goes up in value, right? It's a little bit like gambling. And we want to bring more reality and professionalism to the Bitcoin world, and so does Jack. So the concept behind his exchange is he only wants to list a token that represents a real-world asset. He's focused on tokens that are using the SHA-256 algorithm for proof of work. Okay. So I think initially he's going to list BTC, BCH, BSV, and I think a few other trading pairs. So not Ethereum itself, as I understand it, but for example, I think US dollar coin, which may be based on it, but does represent supposedly a real-world asset. Sure. So it's a move to saying we should be trading. Tokens are a great thing. They're a digital representation. but they should be a digital representation that you can trade on the blockchain of something with real-world value, a real-world asset. So he is heavily supportive of Bitcoin SV, which we think is great, and we can't wait to see how that unfolds. He had announced that it would launch in April, but now it looks like he's advancing it to maybe launch, by in the next few days, potentially. So.
Okay, so good stuff. We'll keep an eye out for that. I got a few questions for you regarding recent events. First thing I want to ask you is, do you believe Craig Wright is Satoshi?
I get asked that a lot, and I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell everyone. I don't think it matters. And that is critical for understanding some of the current controversy. I don't think people should make their decisions about whether they want to build on or support Bitcoin SV based on whether Craig is Satoshi Nakamoto or not. I think it's very clear he was involved in the very early beginnings of Bitcoin. He has been mining Bitcoin since day one. He has an understanding of Bitcoin and its protocol and what it's capable of that's beyond anyone I've seen. And I think people should draw from that what conclusions they want.
Okay, but if people think that Craig Wright is Satoshi, as he claims, then you would think that people that did have the vision of Bitcoin in the kind of libertarian form would actually choose SV as a platform to support. So by him saying he is Satoshi, that would actually influence them to support Bitcoin SV.
Look, I can't deny that some people it might influence, but I think Craig's also been very clear. He doesn't want people to follow him for him, because the whole point of Bitcoin is that no one person should control a money system, right? You should have a blockchain, a decentralized system that's not gated or controlled or influenced by any one person. He's very clear, and I'm as well. We don't want people to support Bitcoin SV because it's Craig. We want people to support Bitcoin SV because it's the original Bitcoin protocol and design. And for people who got into the space because they first read that white paper and they first got excited about Bitcoin, we're the only project delivering that. And that's why we want people to follow us. Now, does it explain why he so vehemently fights for that original vision as opposed to significant changes to it? Yes. That's why it has some relevance. But I want to be very clear to everyone watching this. Don't follow Bitcoin SV because you think Craig is Satoshi or not. Follow it and support it because you believe in this original vision of what Bitcoin can do, and that the original Satoshi design of it is the best and the one that will work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I'm sure there are, other people in the Bitcoin SV community that are doing good things, like yourself, you come across very professional. Do you think that actually having Craig Wright, when I say on your site, do you think you guys might actually be better off without him?
I'm not going to make any apologies for Craig because I don't think he needs to apologize for who he is. I get that he's totally provocative. I get that in some ways our lives might be easier without him involved, but I'll tell you what his wife says to me. He's exactly who he is, and he would not have done and accomplished what he's accomplished if he was someone else. So sometimes it takes a provocative mind and personality to change the world. And our vision is so grand, and it also challenges what a lot of people want, which is a world of many, many tokens and coins and blockchains. Our vision is more controversial in that respect because we believe in a single public blockchain that does it all, where we won't need all these other coins, we won't need all these other tokens, we won't need exchanges the way they live today. And so he's provocative, he's controversial, he pushes buttons, but I think he also, if you listen to him carefully, teaches and dares people to think. And part of the problem, particularly with the herd mentality we have on social media and in the crypto world, there is this kind of herd mob mentality where people just want to follow and pile on without actually thinking themselves. I think that in any new technology world, there are different voices. He's got a different personality and voice than I do. That's why we serve different functions.
And obviously, there's been some lawsuits where he's sent out to people on Twitter and for saying various things. Do you believe that obviously people can say, Craig can say he's Satoshi, and somebody can say he's not. Isn't that just free speech?
So I fully believe in freedom of speech, and I was a former media and digital media lawyer in the U.S. And I know the crypto world believes a lot in it. But free speech is not unlimited. The laws of all major countries are very clear. You cannot defame or libel somebody. Governments can restrict your distribution of pornography, right? There are restrictions that can be placed on whether you can't incite violence in a mob, right? Because that's dangerous.
Yeah.
So free speech is not unrestricted. And I'm not going to speak for Craig because what he's been doing is his own personal thing that's unassociated with nChain or BitcoinSV as a blockchain or a project. But think about someone in his shoes. You've spent many years working on Bitcoin. He's been writing about how he was involved in the creation of Bitcoin and is the force behind Satoshi Nakamoto. Some people agree. There's a lot of people who disagree. And a lot of people call him a fraud. You could just let that go by for a long time, or you could decide you want to take a stand. He's decided to take a stand. Not everyone agrees with that, but I'll respect his decision to invoke his own personal legal rights, just like any of us would have the right to do if we chose to invoke them.
Okay. So we'll move on from that. So obviously, last night, CZ and Binance took the decision to delist Bitcoin SV, and it looks like potentially Kraken and a couple of other exchanges might follow suit. What do you think triggered this to happen, and what are your views on this whole situation from nChain and from yourself personally?
I think the whole situation is rather a sad and unfortunate commentary on our cryptocurrency world, which is that exchanges, because they're dealing with people's funds and assets, should treat assets in a business-minded, fair, and neutral way. The decision by Binance to delist Bitcoin SV, you can tell from the history of tweets which led to it, is driven by personal dislike of Craig and the fact that he decided to invoke legal rights. That's not the reasons an exchange should use to list or delist an asset. Think about it this way. If it was in the stock exchange world, if the New York Stock Exchange decided, you know what, Elon Musk has done something recently that personally offended me. You know, I don't like that he smokes marijuana, right? And he does it publicly. That's offensive. I don't like that he, calls someone a bad name or threatens them legally. Yeah. And then I'm going to delist Tesla because of that? I think that's really problematic, and it's setting a horrible precedent where an exchange head can just decide on a whim practically, I don't like someone who is associated with the project, and therefore I'm going to delist the token. Let's imagine one day Vitalik Buterin does something offensive to CZ or to Jesse Powell at Kraken or whoever else. Yeah. And then they decide on 3 days' notice, I'm going to delist Ethereum and affect the assets of all of the people around the world who hold that cryptocurrency because of personal dislike of one person. The whole point of Bitcoin was to get beyond an individual person, right? Was to get beyond control or influence of money by gatekeepers. Yeah. And when exchanges make the decisions they're making with respect to Bitcoin SV based on personal dislike of someone, and fine, they don't believe he's Satoshi Nakamoto. I accept that. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to like the fact that he wants to enforce legal rights, but that's for the courts to decide, right, whether that's right or wrong. It's not for an exchange to then affect the holdings of potentially millions of people worldwide. We're seeing already some backlash against the exchanges for that. One person tweeted that, as a result of this, a mining group that they help loosely organize of 150 miners have moved all their assets away from Binance and purportedly represent 25% of Binance's annual earnings. I don't know how true that is, but someone tweeted that out on Twitter. And new exchanges like FloatSV are emerging, and they'll take over the trading volume. So it's basically one door closes, another one opens. Long term, I think the real issue is what's the role of exchanges in the future. If we're successful at creating Bitcoin SV as the global ledger, and there's only one dominant token, you don't really need crypto exchanges, right? You don't need exchanges that trade 100 different coins like Binance. Bitcoin will then become something that's available on a forex exchange, like foreign currency. Yeah. And the role of what we have today of crypto assets, which make money by this sort of casino mentality that people have, trying to make money quickly through kind of gambling on tokens, that's going to disappear. And so I think the current era of crypto exchanges is not going to last much longer. I think it's unfortunate that some exchanges have decided to use personal dislike of a Bitcoin SV advocate to make a listing decision. At the end of the day, exchanges do have to make decisions about what to list or delist. They should make them based on a formal business process using objective criteria that they apply equally to all assets. Not just because they like or dislike someone. It should never be about personal like. Otherwise, that sets a horrible precedent, and then it becomes a popularity contest. Do we want cryptocurrency to turn into a popularity contest?
Okay, so let's say you could have, 1 minute in a room with CZ to discuss this. What would your message to CZ be?
I would say thanks for the business you're sending to other exchanges who actually believe in Bitcoin SV.
Anything else?
No, you know what? He's entitled to make his own decisions. The only other thing I wouldn't say to him, but I would say to the world is, for me, I have my opinions about what happened. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this is the kind of thing that regulators of exchanges will deal with, because it highlights how crypto exchanges need to be better regulated and policed. So we don't have a situation like this. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a situation like Quadriga basically collapsing with all of the assets unavailable because the founder died with the private keys in his head, supposedly, right? Those situations should not happen. We need better regulation, a more professional approach to exchanges, and not having an exchange operator or CEO deciding things on a whim. But I don't feel like I need to say anything to CZ. Okay. We're just going to keep going forward and building, because at the end of the day, if we build, we win.
Sure. Okay. And on the flip side, what would your message be to maybe worried Bitcoin SV holders who are seeing their token, depreciate in price?
Yeah. I think people who support Bitcoin SV support it because they believe in a vision for its future. I've always said, if you read the pinned tweet at the top of my Twitter feed, this is a long game we're trying to win, right? I never encourage anyone to invest in, support, or build on Bitcoin SV because of any supposed short-term gain they might get. All cryptocurrency assets right now, their price is purely speculative, if we're truly honest. It's not based on real utility. So what we're focused on is building real utility on Bitcoin SV so that the coin is used. It's used on a daily basis by big businesses as well as for payments, and that will bring it real value. So I would tell all Bitcoin SV holders, now is the time to really sit and think, why did I believe in this coin and vision in the first place? Yeah. It wasn't because it was just because I hope it's going to go up to a certain price tomorrow. Yeah, people do think that. But if you're going to support the Bitcoin SV vision, it's because you support this long-term belief in the power of the original Bitcoin design. And that's going to take several years to develop. This is not, we are not trying to pump and dump like other coins do. We're not promising you're going to get rich quick and go to the moon and, get a Lambo, right? That's not anything we talk about. It's not anything we promise, because it's not what we care about. We care about building an actual viable, valuable blockchain ecosystem.
Okay, thank you for that. So just a couple of quick fire questions to finish off. What's the price of Bitcoin going to be in 2020?
The price of Bitcoin SV, I know, at the end of 2020, I got asked this about what the price would be at the end of 2019. I'm trying to remember what I said before. End of 2020, look, like I said, I try not to focus on price, but if we do the work, we we're doing, if some of the developments that are happening are coming, I can't tell you about, but they are coming, I'll be conservative and say, $500 to $700 US a coin by the end of 2020. I think that's conservative.
And a market cap for crypto in general?
That's harder for me to answer because we believe there should be so many fewer coins and tokens. I think a lot of the weaker ones will die off. And so it's why I don't really focus on this idea of market cap for total crypto, because a lot of that is inflated and artificial now. And a lot of those coins, I think, are going to go away.
Okay. And then can you tell us one controversial opinion that you have that maybe people wouldn't share, maybe you believe in crypto? So one thing that you really believe in that maybe only a minority would agree with you on?
Bitcoin can subsume the internet. People hear that and think we're crazy. People told Steve Jobs he was crazy too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the crazy ideas that change the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second one,
Yeah.
Craig Wright can actually be a very nice person.
Okay. I'm sure it can.
Deep down underneath that grisly exterior of his is actually kind of there's a bit of a sweetheart in there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool, so final question I have is, if Ethereum Layer 2 and other blockchains scalability issues are solved, let's say Lightning Network works, then is Bitcoin SV still relevant if we can scale Bitcoin?
Well, that's a trick question in some ways, because BTC is not really trying to scale, because Lightning Network's not really a scalability solution. It's a solution for expediting direct payments, right, between people. It's not trying to scale its blockchain to enable the kinds of other uses that we believe are fully possible and already happening on Bitcoin SV. So I don't even think BTC is ever going to scale. Bitcoin Cash is not seeking to scale anywhere near as large as we are. And Ethereum, if it solves its scalability problems, which I think is a huge if, I think certainly has a vision for certain uses, smart contract token solutions, but again, nowhere near the master vision we have for a blockchain to subsume all digital activity, both information and money. If you want to summarize our vision in a nutshell, right now the internet is a means and protocol to transmit data and content. When we want to pay for things or do financial transactions, we have to layer on something on top of it, like a payment processor, right, onto a website. Our vision is that the Bitcoin network can do both natively in the same instance, the same transaction, because Bitcoin was birthed as a payment transaction tool, but if it also becomes a means of transmitting data, then the whole world of combining information and money comes together. So that's our vision, and why, while other blockchain projects might succeed in parts here or there, I don't think anyone has anywhere as near of a grand Satoshi vision as we do, and that's what we're going for.
Perfect. Okay, Jimmy, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for joining us. That's all we have time for today. That's EAK TV. Subscribe below, and we'll catch you next time.